And a quick look at headlines now have passed the hour. Updating our top story right now, former Vice President of the U.S., Walter Mondale, has died at the age of 93. Mondale's family says he died in Minneapolis today. He lost the most lopsided presidential election after he told voters back in 1984, when he was the nominee, that he would indeed increase taxes if he won. He lost that election to a wildly popular Ronald Reagan, the incumbent at the time. U.S. Senator from Minnesota Amy Klobuchar, a former presidential contender herself, released this statement tonight. Walter Mondale was a true public servant and my friend and mentor. He set a high bar for himself and kept passing it and raising it. As Minnesota Attorney General, Senator, Vice President, Ambassador, and presidential candidate, he was kind and dignified to the end.
Joining us tonight is Sara Jones. She is the executive director of the Great North Innocence Project. Sara, we appreciate your time tonight on the passing of Walter Mondale, 93 years old, as Rob said. And we understand not only did you work alongside him, but you knew him well. I would appreciate if you would just share with folks at home the man behind the politician that we all saw.
You know, I interacted with Mr. Mondale a great deal as a father, as a grandfather, as a benefactor at the University of Minnesota Law School, and as the husband of Joan Mondale, who was a board member at the Walker Arts Center when I worked there many years ago. So I interacted with him on a number of levels, and I always used to joke with him that he gave my father his start in his 25-year career as state public defender when he wrote an amicus brief as Attorney General that was supportive of the Gideon versus Wainwright case that established the right to counsel. My father was the state public defender for 25 years and helped establish that system here in Minnesota with Walter Mondale's help.
And we should point out that President Jimmy Carter, of course, who selected Mondale as VP, did put out a statement himself tonight saying that Mondale was, quote, the best vice president in our country's history, saying he provided us all with a model for public service and private behavior. Explain from your vantage point, why do you think Mondale was so popular there in Minnesota to the extent that it propelled him to this national making him a national political figure?
You know, I see him as a man of courage and integrity. He fought for things that were not necessarily the easy things to fight for. You know, he was a champion of civil rights in the 60s and really worked hard to move our country forward in ways that weren't always popular, but were the right things to do. And I think that sense of integrity and courage is what I really always took away from him as a human being.
And Sara, he was beloved by so many in the state of Minnesota, as Rob said earlier, of course, carrying that state in 1984 as he ran for president. But he also served as a senator, an attorney general. He was a lawyer. He was the ambassador to Japan. What will his legacy be for the people of Minnesota?
Oh, you know, it's so multifaceted. He was so down to earth. I don't think he ever came across with any pretense, which is what made him so lovable, I think, to so many people. I think his legacy is multifaceted. He was willing to serve in roles that could move our country forward. And I think he always thought of himself as a servant. I have a pin with his picture on it sitting on my desk that says something to the effect of, to be a politician, one has to truly care about people. And I think that is really the essence of who he was.
And Sara, it's so hard to talk. It's impossible to talk about Walter Mondale without talking about Geraldine Ferraro. We forget not that long ago in '84 when he tapped her to be his running mate. That was the first time we'd ever had a woman on a major party national ticket. Of course, in the decades since, we've had Hillary Clinton, of course, Kamala Harris, the current VP of the United States. What do you think fueled his decision at the time to pick Ms. Ferraro, and how extraordinary was that in the moment in 1984 for him to try and break that new political ground?
I think it was a huge act of courage. Again, I think it was something that was not necessarily the easy path to take, but he felt like he wanted to pick the best person for the job, and I think he felt he did that. And many of us, I grew up thinking of her as a role model, and it was kind of the beginning of thinking about breaking the glass ceiling in politics. And that, I don't think for him it was about the statement as much as it was just doing the right thing. I think he believed in what he was doing, and his convictions were that this was somebody he could work with to lead our country in a direction he thought it should go.
Well, such perspective on the life, the legacy, the politician, and the man behind the politician so many of us came to know. Sara Jones, the executive director of the Great Northern Innocence Project. We appreciate your time and your stories about the late Walter Mondale, who has passed away tonight at the age of 93. Sara, thanks again.
Sure. Thank you. My heart goes out to his family.